wasn't that long ago that you couldn't pop an ollie without landing on a wakeboarding or inline skating game. But over the past half-decade, things have cooled considerably on the action sports front, with The Lone Survivor being the series that started the craze, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. Even this series has gone through a bit of a transition over the past few years, going for style points by adding Bam and his posse of jackasses to the mix. This year things are a lot different, with Tony Hawk's Project 8 being the first version of the game built from the ground up for new hardware, and it definitely shows. Featuring a fond look back at what made the series popular in the first place, and some new features that truly revolutionized the genre, does Project 8 stomp the landing, or ultimately end up sketching out? Gone are the long-winded, prank-laden cinemas that permeated Tony Hawk's Underground. In their place is a straightforward setup that harkens back to a simpler time, when players just wanted to roll up the highest combo total possible. Tony is retired, and being essentially the godfather of modern skateboarding, he's looking for 8 new hotshots that he can turn into the next Bones Brigade, thus the name Project 8. You start out as a slack-jawed grommet, hoping to impress the locals and eventually make up Tony's all-star squad. You accomplish this by completing the game's seemingly endless list of challenges and impressing a long list of pros.
I heard you got some sick moves.
While Bam's shenanigans certainly made the series more palatable to a broader market, the Tony Hawk series has always been a hardcore gamer's game. In this sense, Project 8 takes the series back to its roots, and clearly shows that all the fluff from the underground years was completely unneeded. Still, if you rely on great story to keep you motivated, the facile prose will certainly leave you a little empty. You begin the career mode by choosing from one of a handful of pre-created stereotypes. From there you can go on to customize your character further, but most of the changes come in the form of clothing and gear, with only a smattering of hairstyles and other physical changes to speak of. From there you hit the pavement in search of skating fame, and what a crowded pavement it is. Pro skaters, pedestrians, and other wannabes are all over the place, and each one is tied into the game.
What the hell are you looking at there, sizzle cheeks?
Your character starts out at rank 200, and must crack the top 8 in order to complete the game. This is accomplished by completing the game's staggering number of objectives. There are several different types, including spot challenges, which are available at any time and are marked with spray paint. To begin these challenges, you simply begin tricking on the tagged object, with the requirements being things like grinding a rail for a set distance. Puzzle challenges utilize the series' part creator interface, and you must manually reorganize objects in the environment to reach specific locations. Chalk challenges ask you to perform combos on specific lines, and bail challenges require that you wipe out as violently as possible, breaking as many bones as you can. In addition to these standard objectives, there are the classic gap challenges, photo and video challenges where you're required to perform specific tricks, and pro challenges, where you'll partake in demos and other events with the sport's biggest stars. These generally end up opening new sections of the city for your grinding pleasure. This year, instead of selecting a difficulty setting when you first boot up the game, each challenge is classified into 3 categories: Amateur, Pro, and Sick. The increased difficulty settings will require you to hold grinds longer, string together a longer series of tricks, or otherwise do what you were doing on the Amateur setting longer and better. Knocking out the Amateur levels will be no problem for those who have played the series for years, but when you step it up to Pro or Sick, be prepared to restart the objectives over and over again. While you can crack the top 8 and finish the game only completing objectives on Amateur, if you want to become Tony's protege, you'll have to bump it up to Sick. For anyone who isn't a Tony Hawk prodigy, it can seem virtually impossible. It's a stark reminder of why the series has failed to reach critical mass over the years. It's simply too difficult for the average player, and that certainly hasn't changed with Project 8. As you complete challenges, impress innocent bystanders, or do anything else in the game, you're rewarded with Stokens. The more Stokens you get, the higher your rank. Likewise, as you grind, spin, and boost huge air-off kickers, your ratings in those categories will automatically increase. You can also use points the game rewards you with to personalize your skater's skill even further. Just like in prior games in the series, some goals are basically impossible until you've upgraded your character, so you'll have to return to some of them with a beefed-up skater if you hope to complete them. While the career mode is where most players will spend a good 20 hours or more, there's also a nice list of online modes for up to 8 players. In addition to the classics like Graffiti, Combo Mambo, and Trick Attack, there's a new mode called Walls. where each skater leaves a trail of light behind him or her that will cause other skaters to bail should they run into it. The object is to be the last skater standing, which is no easy task with 8 different walls of light strewn across the level. It's very similar to the light cycle game from the original Tron arcade cabinet, and it's a ton of fun, especially for those who aren't especially adept at landing huge combos. Tony Hawk's Project 8 is one huge, seamless world with no loading times whatsoever. Activision has tried this before, but ultimately hid the loading times with long hallways to skate down. This time, it's for real. The dozen or so unlockable areas are some of the best skate havens the series has ever seen. There are so many natural lines to follow that we can't wait to check the leaderboards to see what kind of combos players can score. Tony Hawk's Project 8 is an absolutely huge game that's crammed with content. Just about every trick, style, objective, obstacle, and pro you can think of has made it into the game. Sometimes you'll look at the radar that shows you the location of objectives and be completely overwhelmed with what you have left to complete. Ever since the Revert and Manual were made a part of the series, allowing you to keep your combos going across flat ground, the series gameplay hasn't really changed all that much. This time around, there's a new addition that changes things significantly. Dubbed Nail a Trick, this slow-mo, foot-on-board ballet completely changes the game. Once airborne, you simply click down on both analog sticks and the game will slow to a crawl, with each analog stick representing one of the feet on the board. Provided your skater is common-footed, pushing down on the right analog stick will cause the board to begin rotating for impossibles and pressure flips. Flick the left stick down or up, and you're able to perform horizontal flip tricks like kick flips and heel flips. The trick is to hold the analog stick in a particular direction until the board's rotation is completed, and then release it at just the right time to put your skater's feet back on the board. If you've ever skated before, it's incredibly realistic, relying on real board and foot physics and some amazing motion capture. Regardless of whether you've ever stepped foot on a plank, it can take a good while to get the hang of it. The good news is that it's basically optional. You can complete most of the game without ever using it, which is good news for Tony Hawk vets who appreciate the speed and fluidity that the series has always offered. With that said, it's definitely worth mastering, and undoubtedly a feature that will and should be replicated in future Tony Hawk games. One thing that Nail a Trick forces you to do is use the analog sticks. For those who have been playing the series for quite a long time, this will come as quite a shock, but you might as well get used to them. In order to complete some of the more difficult challenges, you're going to need the analog sticks for balance on rails. Trying to complete some challenges using the D-pad is borderline impossible. The good news is that it's obvious that Neversoft has really worked on making the sticks more user-friendly. The adjustments that you make while grinding or sliding rails can be very subtle while still having a huge impact. At the same time, at certain points you have to be very specific with your trick selection, which can be difficult when using the stick versus the good old D-pad. Other than Nail a Trick, the rest of the game plays primarily the same, meaning it's still the deepest simulation of extreme sports on the market and then some. Once you get good enough, you can literally create never-ending combos that sprawl across the entire level, using manuals and reverts to link all of your combos together. Name a trick, a style of skating, or a form of terrain and it's here. And just like prior games in the series, Project 8 does an excellent job of introducing all of them to you without forcing you to keep using them the entire time. You'll learn freestyle tricks, but only a few objectives will actually force you to use them. And that's what really makes Project 8 such a standout game for both skaters and gamers. It's so flexible that you can basically play it however you want. If you like huge air, there's plenty of opportunity for that. If you'd rather rip off killer grind combos, there are more lines than a notebook. Despite the addition of Nail a Trick, you'll still find Project 8 to be the same old combo-heavy bliss you've come to know and love. You can jump right in and play, but eventually you're going to want to spend the time mastering its new features. It's hard and sometimes foolish to reinvent the wheel. Instead, it's sometimes smarter to make small, incremental steps towards your goal. Neversoft has gone a little beyond that with a brand new Nail a Trick feature, but it's also remembered what has made the Tony Hawk series such a success in the past. A lot of the fluff that has plagued the series for the last couple years has been stripped away, revealing a game that's fast, furious, and focused almost 100% on the play experience. The whopping 56 songs in the soundtrack are just the icing on the cake for a game that will hopelessly addict all kinds of players, regardless of how much of it they hope to complete.